Hello, my darling viewers, and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Miranda, and I am the Enchantress of Avalon. So, for today's video, I have decided to discuss one of my favorite topics, and that is mermaids. Now, I know I've done a bunch of different mermaid videos over the past couple years that I've been doing videos here on YouTube, and I've certainly written a lot about mermaids on my blog. But I think there's no such thing as too many mermaid videos, just like there's no such thing as too many fairy videos. Two of my favorite topics. And mermaids actually are a specific species of water fairy. To clarify, not everyone will say they're a fairy. Some say that they're totally different or just related. But I firmly consider mermaids to be a species of water fairy because all of the different types of mermaids throughout cultures are related to fairy energy, and there is an association of liminality with the mermaids, just as there are with the fae. And bodies of water are often considered to be liminal spaces that would get you into fairyland. So for me, mermaids are very much so one of the many, many species of fae. So for today's video, we're going to mostly be discussing summer as the season of the mermaid. And as we just had the summer solstice last Wednesday, I thought this would be a really fun video to do. So, why is summer the season of the mermaid? Well, obvious answer is it's the season that we associate with swimming and being in the ocean and visiting beaches. And it's the time of year when we would want to go and gather shells, and it is very much that warm, summery fun in the salty sea air. Obviously, we're going to associate this time with mermaids. Specifically this summer, because we have mermaid movies like the new live action Little Mermaid, which I haven't seen yet, but I do want to see, coming out. We do have this uptick in fashion trends with mermaids and different aesthetics with mermaids, which are related to other, fantasy-based aesthetics, like with fairy aesthetics and witchy aesthetics and such. But that's just the way I've always dressed, so I'm not gonna really get much into the fashion. I've always been very inspired by like the 90s witchy, fairy, mermaidy fashions and things. So just know that like mermaid core is a thing. Now, what are some of the really fun things that you can do to embrace the mermaid for the summer? Well, easiest thing to start with is to watch movies. One of my all-time favorites is, of course, Splash. Daryl Hannah plays a mermaid named Madison who comes onto land to get to be with this man that she's fallen in love with. And I love the flashback from when she was a little girl mermaid and he was a little boy and she saved his life. And then years later, she saves his life again and then goes to a sea witch. You don't actually see that in the film, that she goes to a sea witch, but it is confirmed. There's a deleted scene where she goes visit a sea witch and gets to be on land for a few days. And well, it's like a week. It's like just under a week until the next full moon, which I love the link up with that moon cycle thing, because mermaids are, of course, aquatic beings and the ocean's tides are ruled by the moon. So it just makes perfect sense that the moon would also rule the mermaid. And she, of course, gets captured and has to escape. And then, in a twist that most mermaid lovers would totally want to do, instead of the mermaid staying on land for the human goes and lives in the ocean with the mermaid. I love this. It's such a fun movie. And it also gave birth to Madison as a girl's name. Did not exist before this movie came out, which is why when Tom Hanks says Madison is not a girl's name, it's not a name, it's just the name of a street, she's like, well, it's going to be my name because you can't pronounce my actual name. And That's why that name exists for little girls. Then, if you want to go vintage, old Hollywood, or, well, this is an old British film, but I will also mention an old Hollywood film, then I suggest going for the 1940s and 1950s classics. Miranda, not just because it's my name. It's actually a really fun Little Mermaid flick from Britain, starring Glynis Johns, and it came out in 1948, and it's this sweet little black and white flick about a man accidentally capturing a mermaid and her convincing him to bring her onto land because she wants to meet a bunch of men, and he's married, so he refuses her. And then she flirts with all these different guys, and it's really adorable. And eventually, of course, she goes back to the ocean. Then in the second movie, which is a direct sequel, is called Man About Men. She again reprises her role as Miranda, and then she ends up switching places with a lookalike who I believe is her descendant or a relative of some sort. Because I think the mermaids here are, quite ancient, so I think it's a descendant. And again, super fun, causes a lot of chaos. That one is actually in color, so very fun. I do not know if they stream anywhere. That's why I still have my DVD, because I love these movies so much. So highly recommend if you want some mermaid movie fun. There is also a movie that from old Hollywood that came out in 1948 that is called Mr. Peabody and the Mermaid. I don't like it as much as these two mermaid double feature movies here, because the mermaid doesn't get to talk, so that kind of annoys me. She's well acted, but she could only act in a very physical sense, so it's kind of like an old silent film almost, but everyone else can talk, so that just bothers me that she doesn't get to talk, because I would like to have her have a voice. And there is no reason she can't talk. It's not like The Little Mermaid where she gave up her voice. She just can't talk. And the one saving grace of that movie is that I am a big William Powell fan, and he plays the man who finds the mermaid and ends up falling in love with her. They're both the first of these of the Glynis Johns movies that's just titled Miranda, and Mr. Peabody and the Mermaid have that whole, he's going through a midlife crisis and he returns to his wife thing. Very kind of 7 Year Itch, which is another movie I do love. I'm a huge Marilyn Monroe fan. But anyway, how else can we embrace mermaids? Well, we can obviously go swimming, visit the beach, or just take a really luxurious bath. If you don't have access to a pool or a beach near you, or time off to actually go to the beach, just draw yourself a really luxurious bath. Light a bunch of candles and listen to mermaid music. I actually really love doing mermaid baths and listening to the music from the opera Undine, because that's of course about a mermaid. And some other books you could read. There is The Romance of the Fairy Melusine by Gareth Knight. I should say it's translated by Gareth Knight. He is a really great writer who writes a lot about fairy lore, Avalon, and specifically the Arthurian legends, how everything connects into the Arthurian legends. And he translated this text of one of the versions of the Melusine legend. And it's actually quite long for a legend, but short, like for a novel, it's shorter. It's only 150 pages. But for a legend kind of fairy tale, that's pretty long. It's really beautifully done, and I have done whole videos on Melusine and her mythos before. But Melusine is an ancient water fairy goddess who is descended from a different water fairy who had a relationship with a human and gave birth to 3 daughters, but then he betrayed her trust, because there's always this tenet, like with any fairy lore, there is the tenet of there's something you can't do, and that would obviously make the wife leave you. And their father betrayed her. And when they find out about this, Melusine and her sisters, headed by Melusine herself, decide to try and take vengeance on their father, and they're punished. And Melusine's punishment is to work as this fairy well maiden, essentially, at this well out in the woods. And she has to spend every Saturday in a mermaid form, or otherwise some tellings specify that it's actually a serpent from the waist down instead of a traditional mermaid tail. And sometimes it's also twin mermaid tails, which is why Melusine is the mermaid that we see on these Starbucks cups. Anyway, she's a brilliant figure. She falls in love with a human and marries him, bears him many children, impacts the architecture of the land. She builds a bunch of castles, but eventually he does what he's not supposed to, which is spy on her on a Saturday. And then, moreover, he, in some versions, he automatically tells her he did this and she leaves. In other versions, he doesn't. He keeps it a secret. But eventually it comes out when they are arguing over one of their children and their bad behavior. And he calls her a monster and says that the reason that their son is behaving like this is because he has inherited her monstrousness. And again, she leaves him, which, yeah, she should. He betrayed her, and he also called her a monster. And she returns back to Avalon. It's a very interesting legend and mythos, so I definitely recommend reading a full version of it. It's such a great story. And the other book that I think is just absolutely iconic for this time of year is this gorgeous The Mermaid Handbook, and it is an alluring treasury of literature, lore, art, recipes, and projects. It's by Carolyn Turgeon, and she is the editor of Fairy Magazine, but it's now called Enchanted Living Magazine. So it's gorgeous, gilt edges, hardcover, and all of the gorgeous artwork within this. And it goes through the whole history of mermaids in different cultures. It's very, very fun. And there's like little art projects and recipes and stuff in there. Super fun. Other movies you could also watch are, of course, any version of The Little Mermaid. And I would also recommend, if you're interested in horror, there is a Polish horror film that's a mermaid musical. It's called The Lure. And last time I checked, it was streaming on Max. I don't know if it still is, but it's been streaming on there for quite a while. It's a really fun movie. And it, of course, does have subtitles if you don't speak Polish. I do not, but I love it. It's got that darker edge to the mermaids, and mermaids are, besides the fun in the sun ocean creatures, they have that siren connection, that more monstrous side to them, and it's fun to explore that because that's the symbol of the ocean being treacherous and of going to the depths within ourselves, to our unconscious, to integrate those shadow aspects, to confront our shadows. And finally, I want to mention that, of course, two of my favorite goddesses, my favorite goddess ever, Morgana Le Fay, has a mermaid aspect in that she is also shares a name with the Mary Morgans, which are a breed of Welsh water fairy. And of course, one of my other favorite goddesses, the Irish goddess Anya, has a fairy form, and she is also celebrated at midsummer, so that is a very perfect integration to tie together this summer mermaid video. So I do hope that you have enjoyed watching. If you have, please like, comment, subscribe. Check out my blog, whiteroseofavalon.life. Maybe even purchase a tarot or oracle card reading from me. I do have those services on my blog. And also, I will link my Discord server down in the description box below, as I always do, if you want to join in the discussion over there. Have a very fabulous Mermaid Monday, all. Bye now.